So great to have you with us, everybody. I'm your host, Jim Masters. Thanks so much for joining us. We are coming at you right now from Broadcast Central here at JMS, and we're going to be celebrating one of the iconic, beloved television series from the 1970s into the 80s, The Jeffersons. Yes, we love The Jeffersons. Oh, yeah, George and Wheezy and company. We're going to celebrate it because, would you believe, it's been 50 years since the Jeffersons first debuted on CBS, this Norman Lear classic, which of course grew out of All in the Family with Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton and Sally Struthers and Rob Reiner. Of course, they were the neighbors, the Jeffersons, good friends of the Bunkers. And then Norman Lear and company decided, you know what? We're going to spin off that series. And the Jeffersons was born. Of course, Good Times, Maude, and so many other series came out of All in the Family as well. But today we are celebrating the iconic series, The Jeffersons. Believe it or not, it has been 50 years since they initially signed on CBS, and it's been a classic ever since. One of the most beloved series of all time. Pure humor, social issues, great commentary, great cast, and so much more. Of course, starring Sherman Hemsley and Isabel Sanford and company. And we've got a very special guest who's going to take us behind the scenes of this iconic series as we celebrate 50 plus years of the iconic TV series, The Jeffersons. Again, one of the most beloved of all time. And Elva Green, who is an award-winning celebrated author, has penned a fabulous book celebrating the Jeffersons with iconic interviews. Matter of fact, she even chatted with Norman Lear and so many others. Here is the book, everybody. It is, of course, The Jeffersons. It's a fresh look back featuring episodic insights, interviews, a peek behind the scenes, and lots of photos. And the foreword, well, you know who did the foreword? Somebody you remember and love from the Jeffersons, Marla Gibbs. Yes, she did the foreword. So many laughs, so many years, so many great episodes of this iconic series that we love. Of course, they were covered on TV Guide and all the magazines over the years as well. We encourage you to share your favorite Jeffersons episodes with us. Drop a comment below. Let us know what you've always enjoyed about George and Louise Jefferson and company. And we're going to really celebrate one of my, favorite TV series, The Jeffersons. That's why I was excited to put this episode together for all of you and to bring celebrated author Elva Green onto our show to tell us some secrets, some behind the scenes, and open up the incredible vault of memories. These are some of the great actors and actresses that we fell in love with. Of course, Sherman's career has been, something that lasted many, many years. We lost him way too early. And of course, Isabel Sanford, great actress, theater and television, Broadway. Remember she was in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner as well. And a lot of great shows and great series. But it is really the Jeffersons that sort of brought it all together. The Jeffersons, this fresh look back featuring episodic insights, interviews, and a peek behind the scenes is something really special. The Jeffersons, as I mentioned, was created by award-winning television writer, producer Norman Lear, who created some of the most iconic series of all times, and it grew out of All in the Family. And it was one of the longest running sitcoms in TV history, starring Isabel Sanford, Sherman Hemsley, Mike Evans, Marla Gibbs, Zara Cully, who played Mrs. Jefferson. She was always a riot when she was on the show. They portrayed a family who were able to move on up to a high-rise apartment in Manhattan, New York, to the East Side. The neighbors were played by Roxie Roker, Franklin Cover, Berlinda, Tolbert, and Paul Benedict as well. They were really, really fun. Prominent cast members include Ned Wertimer. Ned Wertimer, of course, is Ralph the Doorman. Paul Benedict, of course, was Bentley next door. Also, Denny Wells and Ernest Harden Jr. were on the series. Many guests, too, joined the cast of the series. And there's a great shot with Sherman Hemsley and Roxie Roker. Roxie Roker, if you didn't know, is the mom to music icon Lenny Kravitz. Yes, that is his mother, if you didn't know that. There's a great shot with Zara Cully, who played Mrs. Jefferson. She was always giving it back to everybody, but she loved her George. And it was really, really hilarious. Many guest stars came on the show too. Sammy Davis Jr., Billy D. Williams, Gladys Knight appeared. Laughter was the name of the game through serious issues such as racism, alcoholism, juvenile delinquency. All were tackled. The show remains a favorite through reruns seen in many countries around the world. And the number of fans who tuned in to the Norman Lear 2019 Jeffersons TV remake attest to its popularity. This book is incredible. And Elva, our very special guest, is the author of the award-winning biography, Eddie Green, The Rise of an Early 1900s Black American Entertainment Pioneer, and the daughter of Eddie Green. And she's crafted another fine achievement by sharing her take on the Jeffersons from a fan's point of view. She's written this fun, entertaining, and informative background history with that forward by Marla Gibbs, which is something really, really extra special. And look at the cast and think about your memories, share, interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. We always love hearing from our viewers and our lovely fans of our series. Also, it includes an end word from John H. McWhorter, linguist, author, and associate professor at Columbia University as well. Some other things, too, if you didn't know, she thanks Norman Lear for taking time to speak with her for the project, and Nat Segaloff for hooking her up with Mr. Lear, and Cindy, Mr. Lear's assistant, who arranged to have him available for exactly as long as Elva needed him, which is amazing. And she had an opportunity to talk with so many people behind the scenes about this iconic series. Again, we all love the Jeffersons, and we're going to get into it, and we're going to celebrate it with you right here, right now, with our very special guest joining us again. Here are just some shots of the amazing cast. Of course, there's Berlinda and Mike, Berlinda Tolbert and Mike Evans, and Zara Cully. And of course, yes, you remember Lionel and Jenny. Yeah, we love this. There's Paul Benedict, who played Bentley. And of course, Ned Wertimer, right there in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, who was Ralph the doorman. All of these figures became a part of our lives, part of our psyche. And it's our pleasure to have an opportunity to celebrate the Jeffersons right here on the show. So with that all said, as a nice little intro there for you, let's welcome our very special guest. She's got her headphones on. She's all excited to be here. She's got a lot of stories to share with us as we celebrate the Jeffersons. Elva, Diane Green is joining us, and more. Elva, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here again. This is a big deal for me.
This is your return visit because you were with us when we celebrated B. Arthur and Maude and that iconic television series, another one from Norman Lear. What was it about the Jeffersons? And this is so perfect because it was only a couple of weeks ago that the very first episode of the Jeffersons appeared on the Saturday night on CBS 50 years ago. What was it about the Jeffersons that spoke to you where you wanted to write about it and take us behind the scenes? And we're so glad you did, Elva.
Well, that's a good question. I like saying that. I think people say that because they're not sure what to say next. But after I wrote my first book, the biography about my father, the publisher of my book liked it so much that he requested that I write a book about the Jeffersons. Bear Manor Media, that's my publisher, Mr. Ben Omart, was a real fan of Marla Gibbs, actually. And that was the one big reason that he wanted the book written. It had actually, before I got the project, the book they had tried to write a book on the Jeffersons 10 years before I came along. But, you know, life happened, and the people who started the book and who started the research just couldn't finish it. Some of them passed away, and another person he just had too much on his plate. So I got a chance to write the Jeffersons myself. And yeah. And I
You
said, of
really take
course,
us behind the scenes too, which I think is so great. I mean, you got a chance to even chat with Norman Lear himself. That must have been amazing.
right. Yeah, I wasn't in the beginning when I first started writing the book. I did not consider myself to be, like this great writer. I thought I was really a novice. And so when I got the paperwork for the book, I was given paperwork that people had already done, and I just copied a lot of what I was given and turned it in. That wasn't what they wanted. So I got it back. I had to redo. They wanted me to redo the book from my own point of view. And that's how I learned, what writing is really all about, the research and calling people and finding them and interviewing people that I never thought I would talk with or I was afraid to call. It took me longer to call Marla Gibbs than it did for me to call Norman Lear. I don't know why that is. But I finally got in touch with both of them, and I was blown away just to be able to talk with them. And it turns out that actually I had met Marla Gibbs years before. She didn't remember me, but I remembered her. So I was able to say, I met you 20 years ago. And that helped me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And Norman Lear, I don't know. His assistant, and I can't think of her name right now. She was so nice, but she was able to get me 20 minutes with him. Yeah. And, and I yeah. So I interviewed him. I interviewed some of the writers, some of the guests, and some of the crew even, and the lady who was their executive assistant. I guess they call him that now, secretary. The lady that was their secretary, she was fantastic. She hooked me up with a lot of people.
That's amazing. Was it a series that you always enjoyed watching over the years, or you're writing it from a fan perspective? And it's had such a wonderful place, as I mentioned at the start of the show, in the hearts and minds, of all of us over the years. The brilliant acting, the brilliant writing, the sets, the theme song, of course, is listed as one of the top TV theme songs of all time. People, start singing, moving on up. The cast again was really perfect, and they played off each other so beautifully. You really thought that they were real people. You can connect with them on so many different levels. And it was also wonderful to see, a Black couple actually, in this case, and they treated it, I think, beautifully, in a successful, loving family sort of atmosphere, which wasn't always the case. It wasn't always represented on television. And I thought that
Right.
that was a beautiful thing that they did. It was very inspiring for people.
And, you know, and when the show was being broadcast, yes, I was I watched the Jeffersons. Yes, of course, I watched the Jeffersons. It was a black TV show. There wasn't too many black TV shows on at the time. So, we had to show up. But at that time, I wasn't focused on the writing, whether their acting was top of the line. I just watched it because they were black, they were funny. I loved Zara Cully. She was just hilarious. I loved the fact that she was crazy about her son. It was something that everybody that I knew, at least all my black friends, watched the Jeffersons. That was just what you did. And Mike Evans was very handsome. And Damon Evans was I wasn't too happy about Damon Evans because that meant they had to get rid of Mike Evans. But Damon and I are friends today. So when I started the book, I had a whole different attitude from when I was watching the show. And that's what maybe caused me to have to look at certain issues in the show because of the way things are today. The Jeffersons wouldn't go over very well, in my opinion.
Probably a lot of
If,
the shows, they say the same thing about All in the Family as well. I know they've
yes,
done updated versions of them and to great acclaim and fanfare, but some people say that some of those shows today wouldn't necessarily be represented on television today. They're in reruns, they're there, but as far as coming out with new
right,
versions, you wouldn't necessarily see these. And of course, the Jeffersons, as we mentioned, grew out of All in the Family with Archie and Edith and Mike and, you know, Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers and Gene Stapleton and Carol O'Connor, who did a brilliant job with that series, and Mike and Gloria and Edith and Archie. And then, of course, outgrew the Jeffersons, who were the neighbors, and they were. There was also there was a Henry that was on Henry Jefferson that was on, who I believe was George's brother, who was also on All in the Family as well. And then I
right. The very
believe,
beginning.
yeah, and I believe Mike and Gloria bought ended up moving into the Jeffersons' old house when the Jeffersons moved on up to from Queens over to Manhattan to the East Side and the Upper East Side as George was expanding his dry cleaning business. And but yeah, growing out of All in the Family, and that was a time when there were a lot of spin-offs that would happen with TV shows, a lot of miniseries too, but a lot of spin-offs and All in the Family and Norman Lear really took the ball and ran with it with all these spin-offs of Maude and Good Times and the Jeffersons. And there was, of course, Gloria, which was with Sally Struthers. That was another one as well.
Right, right.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
but they really did tackle issues, topics with humor, um, with love, and with inspiration that weren't necessarily being tackled at that time, which was it was groundbreaking in its way, wasn't it?
I think so. One of my favorite episodes was when their neighbor, Roxie Roker's husband, I can't think of his name
Tom
at the
Willis.
moment.
Franklin cover. Tom Willis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Willises, Tom Willis. Tom thought that his wife wanted him to be more like black people, or like a
Remember that
black man.
episode? Yes.
And he tried to get George to show him how to be black. And that was hilarious. That was so funny. And Tom, he was just like, he was perfect. You know, he did that hat on the side thing. He had the big hat and his tip to the side. And and he walked, you know, dragging one hand when he
Did
walked
the whole
across the
thing.
floor. And he was trying very hard. And you know, it was just funny to me. And I was like, that's right. I thought that was, you know, it was good, and it turned out well. I think the episode did. And of course, she didn't want him to be more like a black man. She wanted him to be who he was.
Mhm.
And you know, George was like, he didn't really make very good black man anyhow. But he looked like Huggy Bear. I don't know if you remember Huggy Bear.
Oh, sure.
Huggy,
Yes.
he wore this high heel shoes with the fish in the sole. But it was just, you know, it was really funny. So that, but I don't remember that from back then. I remember it from when I was researching the book. Just like with the kiss between Roxy and Franklin.
Yes.
Their first kiss. And they had a doozy.
Yes,
I think
they
they were
did.
out in the hallway. Yeah. And Norman Lear, you know, he wanted that to happen. He wanted to find out, you know, what would happen if we did this. You know, at first they thought, well, people would like be offended. And it turns out that it wasn't as bad as, you know, as they thought. They did not get a lot of news, you know, a lot of letters against that first kiss, even
Kind of
though it
like
was
the kiss that
between.
Sammy Davis Jr. did to Archie Bunker, right? On the cheek.
Yeah, but see, I never saw that. I didn't see that until I was researching the book. But I think, you know, in those days back then, I don't know, to me, I wasn't really into the fact that I'm black,
Right.
and, you know,
Right.
I'm a
Enjoyed the
person,
shows and
and
yeah.
there are people, yeah. And I looked at, you know, I watched Father Knows Best.
Yes. Robert Young and Company. Yeah. Eleanor Donahue.
And
Billy Crystal.
Life of Riley.
Life of
You
Riley.
know,
I Love Lucy. And right? Exactly. Yeah.
I love
You watched it for
Lucy.
the comedy of it and for right. Exactly.
Exactly.
Which is what it's all about.
Exactly. You know,
Why
I
do you
was
think it
happy.
was such a groundbreaking show and why people still love the Jeffersons today? They love the reruns. I know even we encourage folks, if you'd like to comment, feel free to comment. We see some nice comments coming in right now. When you thank everybody, we're actually coming at you live right now. So we're here, Elva and I, and good to see everybody watching. We welcome everybody around the world. A lot of people talking about the fact that the Jeffersons, unfortunately, didn't really have a proper goodbye, a proper ending. It just faded off into the sunset. And sometimes when you have legions of fans and people invested in it emotionally and carving out the time to watch and really in touch with the characters and following the storylines like they do with soap operas and many other ongoing things,
Right.
when it just disappears and there's no cap or wrap, it feels unfinished, incomplete. Something's not right. Something should happen. And All in the Family, of course, morphed into Archie Bunker's place. They had Edith pass away. So there was some sort of sense of ending of that, but then going on to Archie Bunker's place. But there was no real ending per se to the Jeffersons. A lot of people feel there was a robbing that happened there.
And, you know, in my opinion, from what I've read, the producers can do what they want with a show. If they think it's time to go, it's time to go. And they just, you know, send you a letter and saying goodbye. But there were signs that there weren't as that the ratings were low. In the book, I talk about it, like in the 5th season, some of the guests were either put on there to raise the ratings, or they were on there because nobody'd ever heard of them. It's like the writers knew somehow that something wasn't working. And what I found out was that people were going on to a different type of sitcom, you know, like Starsky and Hutch. But there was a gentleman that I interviewed. He was in the last episode. He told me that while he was on stage, he had a feeling that things were just kind of off with the cast. And he said, you know, it seemed like they weren't going to be on much longer. People were, you know, there were rumors and nobody really said it out loud. Mm-hmm. But he said he had that feeling. And I thought, well, you know, if he had a feeling like that, something was up. Because I noticed, you know, the writing and through the 5th and the 6th episodes or season, something had changed. So, but, you know, if the producer says it's done, it's done. There's not really much an actor can do, no matter how great they were. You know, everybody loved George Jefferson, you know.
He was so perfectly
sitting in the
cast in that
audience.
role.
Yeah. We
they
don't,
both were.
Yeah. We, you know, I wasn't around when that happened, when they cut off the Jeffersons. I wasn't watching it.
I guess
by then.
The Jeffersons, it was abruptly canceled. The cast wasn't informed until after the July 2nd, 1985 episode,
right?
Red Robins. And Sherman Hemsley, of course, who was George Jefferson, he said that he had learned that the show was canceled by reading it in the newspaper. Isabel Sanford, who was Louise Jefferson, heard about the cancellation through her cousin, who read it in the tabloids, and she publicly stated that she found the cancellation with no proper finale. She thought it was disrespectful. She really wanted it to happen. And then, and Franklin Cover, who was Tom Willis, said he heard about the cancellation while watching Entertainment Tonight. And there was also a spinoff too. There was one spinoff called Checking In, which was centered on the housekeeper, Florence, Marla Gibbs, who takes a job as a cleaning management at a hotel. It only lasted 4 episodes, but they tried to spin that off as well. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do. They wanted to keep her for, you know, they really liked her. And I don't know, I didn't really go into that too much because there were just short episodes.
Just 4,
yeah. And I didn't really get a chance to talk with her about that. That's, it's unfortunate. Well, the one person that I had a chance to actually meet and be with and spend time with was Berlinda Tolbert. And she invited me to her hotel and we had lunch together. Yes. And
she is Jenny, right?
Jenny, yes. And that was, she gave me a lot of background. She told me, who to contact. And she talked about Mike Evans. And, I don't think that she had a problem at the time with the way the show ended, but I think it was Isabel Sanford that was most
Disappointed.
upset. Yes.
Yeah. Makes sense, yeah, because so much was invested into the character. It really is amazing when you think about it. It was created by Don Nichol, Michael Ross, Bernie West, of course, developed by Norman Lear, directed by Jack Shea, seasons 1 through 5, and various others, seasons 4 and 10 and 11, Bob Lally, seasons 5 through 9, starring Isabel Sanford and Sherman Hemsley, Marla Gibbs, Roxie Roker, Franklin Cover, Paul Benedict, Mike Evans, Berlinda Tolbert, Zara Cully, Damon Evans, Jay Hammer. The theme music is by Jeff Barry and Jeanne Dubois, who was the neighbor on Good Times. Walona, she sang the theme song, Moving On Up, right?
Yes. Yep. She says she stayed up one night. She co-wrote it, or someone helped her or wrote it with her. It was a gentleman. I don't know his name right now, but she sat up all night. She wanted something else to do. She told Norman, I need something different to do here. And he told her, okay, come up with something. And she went home and she wrote that in one night.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And it's a theme that
tried.
Sticks with you,
And it was, it's funny because it's a Black TV show. And I don't know if it was particularly supposed to be, for Blacks only, but the words to the song, not too many people. Well, it's not just Black people that were trying to keep their heads above water.
Everybody
keeping
during
your
that
head
time
above
in the
water.
70s and early 80s, the economy,
Yeah.
everybody.
But it seemed like it was a Black song,
Listed as one of the top.
No more something in the kitchen, no more.
Right. 50 all-time favorite TV themes by TV Guide. And one of them is the Jeffersons theme, which is really amazing. It really, really is.
And the things that she sang about were things that I could relate to, and, and the fact that they were moving on up. I thought that was pretty remarkable because I knew a lot of people, including my family, that would have liked to have moved on up with them.
Absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the series itself, for people's memory banks triggering that, the sitcom was broadcast on CBS January 18th, 1975 through July 2nd, 1985. It lasted 11 seasons and a total of 253 episodes, making the Jeffersons one of the longest running sitcoms in history. It's amazing, fantastic run, and so many episodes. And of course, in syndication, being seen on so many television stations and nostalgic networks and so much more, over the years. They graced all the magazines, the TV guides, the tabloid magazines, the entertainment magazines, and so much more. And I just think the casting was so perfect. There's Paul Benedict, who played Bentley, of course, the neighbor next door, the bumbling neighbor next door. Zara Cully, who played Mrs. Jefferson. We loved the episodes when she was on, always giving it to Louise, standing up
Yeah.
for her son. Then every once in a while, when she would tell George off, that was hilarious. Set him
I know.
straight every once in
Yep.
a while.
Norman Lear he really loved Zara Cully. He
She
told me
was
that.
amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
She was
Yes.
really amazing. And she passed away during the run of the series, I believe. And
Yeah.
greatly missed. They had to sort of rework that. Roxie Roker, of course, was fantastic as Mrs. Willis next door, mom to Lenny Kravitz, the incredible singer and musician and producer.
Mhm.
Um, she was, the casting there was fantastic as well with Roxy, huh?
Yeah. And, I didn't know it at the time, but she had been on stage and
Yes,
she had already won awards. She was, you know, brilliant in her own way. Um,
absolutely. Yeah. She was Helen Willis on the sitcom, but
yes.
yeah, she had been in, she was originally from Miami, Florida, but she was even a reporter in the 1970s on WNEW Channel
Mm.
5 in New York City. She hosted a
Uh-huh.
public affairs show for the station, Channel 5, WNEW TV in New York in the 70s, and called Inside Bed-Stuy, dealing with events in the Brooklyn neighborhood. And she also, she was in a lot of different movies and shows, but Punky Brewster, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, A Different World, Murder, She Wrote, The Love Boat, Sweepstakes, 227, Beat the Clock, and so many other shows and series. Yeah, Roxie Roker was
Yes.
somebody who graced us with a lot of incredible performances. Fantasy Island, ABC After School Specials. She had roles in the television miniseries Roots and the movie
Yes.
Claudine. She was also a children's advocate, cited by the city of Los Angeles for her community work as well. And of course, like I mentioned, her son, um, Lenny Kravitz, but her second cousin, once removed, Al
Al Roker.
Roker from
Yeah.
NBC. Al
Yeah.
Roker. So people wonder, is Roxie Roker and Al Roker, are they, related? Second cousin once removed, and Zoe Kravitz, her granddaughter. So
Right.
a lot of incredible talent
I
in that family.
I actually tried to get in touch with Lenny Kravitz. At the time, I had a publicist working with me from Canada, and she knew someone who knew someone who knew Lenny Kravitz's drummer. And they tried to get me an interview with Lenny through the drummer. But turns out that he wanted a lot of money to be interviewed. So that didn't really go
There are
over.
some guests which the audience will probably find a little interesting, surprising. There are some guests who want uh, lots of money, a mortgage payment or two to be chatted with.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Some just like to go
And
on because they love it. They love the publicity. They like to have fun. They like to,
yeah,
others. There are a few out who want, big money.
right.
Uh,
He wanted big money.
big.
And they kept trying. Another guy tried, but no.
Well, never
So
say
because I
never.
wanted to use,
Lenny, if you're
I
listening,
wanted to,
Elva would love to chat with you, and Jim would love to chat with you.
I wanted to put his
Lenny's amazing.
pictures, one of his pictures with his mom in the book, but I
Yeah,
couldn't use his photos without his permission.
right. Yeah.
So I didn't,
Isabel
and
Sanford, of course, was such a integral part of the series as well. And Eloise Gwendolyn Sanford, she was born in 1917. We lost her in 2004. American stage, film, television actress, comedian, best known for Louise Wheezy Mills Jefferson. And do you know that she became the second African-American actress to win a Primetime Emmy Award after Gail Fisher, and the first African-American actress to win Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series, Isabel Sanford?
Yeah, I didn't know that she was in a movie with Spencer Tracy. I
Guess
didn't
who's
really
coming
learn
to
a lot
dinner?
until I
Sidney
started
Poitier.
researching.
Yes,
Yeah.
Katharine Hepburn. We actually had the daughter of Stanley Kramer. She's a dear friend of ours and of the show. Catherine Cat Kramer, and her father, Stanley Kramer, who created It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and all these iconic shows and series. And she talked about the wonderful relationship, Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, Sidney Poitier, and of course, Isabel Sanford was on that iconic movie, one of my favorite movies, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And
Yes.
she was seen there. She grew up in New York City, in Harlem. And she also performed as an amateur at the Apollo Theater, an incredible career. Again, so many shows and series. And she made her Broadway debut in 67, in 65, actually. James Baldwin's The Amen Corner
The
as
Amen
well.
Corner.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she just, I always enjoyed her. She was really something. And she continued, beyond. People wonder, what did one do beyond the iconic series? She was guest starring in lots of television and film. In 1987, she started her own sitcom, Isabel's Honeymoon Hotel, which aired 5 days a week in syndication as well. And she was on a lot of different series too, and shows and specials over the years.
Right.
Yeah, lots of great shows over the years. She was on Dream On, Living Single, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, In the House, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, The Steve Harvey Show, Hearts Are Wild. She played a supporting role in the action movie Original Gangsters. She was also back in 1974. She was on season 1, episode 14, Die Before They Wake, of Kojak. And she
Yes.
also played Louise Jefferson in a touring company of the real live Jeffersons in the mid-90s alongside Sherman Hemsley. She
Yeah.
guest starred on Sprung. She was in the film Sprung, and she was on The Parkers, Mafia, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. She got her Hollywood Walk of Fame star as well, and so much more. Just a little bit about the iconic actress who was Louise Jefferson. What are some things, with the book itself? What did you learn as you were talking to all these amazing people? What were some things some nuggets, some behind the scenes things you learned that will surprise people when they read your fabulous book?
Oh my goodness. This is my fabulous, by the way. We had to I couldn't get a picture with Zara Cully in with the cast, so I opted to do this as Zara and Mr. Bentley dancing. You mentioned Jay Hammer earlier. I meant to go back to that. Jay played the Willis's son I think he didn't even last a whole season. I forget exactly what happened, but he told me that he had to wear his own clothes for his part. And I guess that was a big deal back then. But he sent me an email, and that was what he put in his email.
So no
But you said
wardrobe budget for him.
Yeah. I guess that meant he had to spend his own money to be on the program.
To be on the Jeffersons, yeah.
Right. I don't know.
Fresh look back
To
in with the
me,
insights and interviews. Yeah.
the thing that got me was the fact that there were old time radio artists on the show. I didn't know it at the time when I was watching it, but when I was researching, I found Lillian Randolph had appeared. I have a picture here. She appeared as Zara Cully's sister. And Lillian Randolph was in my father's very first movie back in 1939. That amazed me. Because that meant that Norman Lear was still using an actress who had, she was a big deal in 1939, but it's probably difficult to get parts in the 1970s for a woman at her age, especially a Black woman. I thought, that was great.
You also
But,
break down the episodes too, which I think is amazing. Like you mentioned, episode 3, Louise Feels Useless, February 1st, 1975, director Jack Shea, writers Lloyd Turner, Gordon Mitchell, guest Milton Seltzer. Louise has nothing to do and decides to get a job without telling George. I mean, you actually have it where you list these things out. George's Family Tree, episode 2.
Yes.
Which was January 25th, 1975, directed by Jack Shea, writers Perry Grant and Dick Bensfield. No guests on that. George is very unimpressed about people's ancestors until he finds out he is descended from a tribe of royalty. And then suddenly George loves it.
Yeah,
You break all that out. You took the time to sort of break that all out for everybody. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I could do that in the book. I could write those things because that was what I wanted to do. That's why I also interviewed crew members, people who were pulling the cords in the background.
Exactly. And Marla
moving
Gibbs,
the cameras around.
Yes, the production crew, the directors, the editors, the writers, the people who actually put the show together. What was it like chatting with them? That's a different perspective.
Yeah, it was amazing. And, every one of them, almost everyone I talked with, thought that, the feeling on the show was wonderful. Maybe that's why it was so hard when they didn't get a final episode, but everybody got along. Everybody, the cast, the crew. I have a picture. The young lady who was the secretary at the time, she sent me a picture, which is in the book, of the whole cast and crew from, I think it's 1904, except for Marla, because Marla had already been chosen to appear on a different sitcom at least a year before the Jeffersons ended. So she was off doing another show, which didn't really pan out. And she had to go back to the Jeffersons, or they wanted her to go back to the Jeffersons.
It's amazing, too. You talk about Marla right off the bat as Florence. We're talking about Marla Gibbs. She became a hit with the audience. They took to her right away. They absolutely loved her. And, that, like you say in the book, that deliverance of a line that got a huge laugh from everyone in the studio. How come we overcame and nobody told me? This line got the biggest laugh of the first episode. You say kudos to the writers. Marla Gibbs just put the right touch on that line, the right tone of voice, and the right facial expression as well. And a writer from AP Television agreed the only real laugh came at the end. She was really fantastic. But what's amazing, too, there were sometimes not all the critics who reviewed the show and reported their views were impressed with the characters or the scripts, right? It wasn't all smiles and joy from critics all the time, right?
Well, it depends, depending on what the episodes were about, depending on the language. One of the reasons that I had John McWhorter do the end word, John M.H. McWhorter, was he's a linguist and he studies Black English. I'll put it that way. And they use the words in the Jeffersons that you can't use today on TV. Now you have to say the N word. And
right.
In those days, you could just say, the word
or even the H for white, rhymes with donkey. you George would use that.
Yes.
Funny when he would say it. Yeah, the way he would say it. Yeah.
The person who wrote Honky in the House, I have to mention him, helped me write this Jefferson's book. He showed me how to list the writers and how to say, written by, teleplay by, and he's still a friend today. And he said that on purpose because, you just don't say those words today. But that's the name of his most recent book, Honky in the House. And I on social media, I saw where one lady said, "How come he had to use that word?"
Yeah.
But and that's today.
That's today, these days, exactly.
But
yeah.
in 75, people talked like George Jefferson talked on the TV show.
Naturally, right? Yeah.
In that when way. Somebody tried to hit on Wheezy, George got upset. Yeah. And he told, and he was like, you can't say N-word,
Right. Yeah. I know what you mean. And exactly.
The point at the time was nobody complained because I would have said the same thing, Black people, that's the way they talk. I mean, it was real. It was a realism. It's still a realism. If you go out right now and stand on the corner, you'll still hear that word. There's nobody out there going the N word.
Sherman Alexander Hemsley.
He was, when he did it
for that role.
Yes.
Yeah, we lost him too early. He was born in 1938 in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, and died, unfortunately, July 2012 at the young age of 74 in El Paso, Texas. And just perfect as George Jefferson. But then, of course, he went on to, after the Jefferson, first All in the Family, then the Jeffersons. But then he was Deacon Ernest Fry on the NBC series Amen, which was from 86 to 91.
Yeah.
And B.P. Richfield on the ABC series Dinosaurs. He also played Judge Carl Robertson on the NBC series The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And for his work on the Jeffersons, Sherman Hemsley was nominated for a Golden Globe Award and an Emmy Award as well. And of course, well deserved. He also won an NAACP Image Award for Best Performance by an Actor in a Comedy Series or Special. And that was the Jeffersons in 1982. And of course, he was seen on so many other, shows and series and things of that nature. He was in the Air Force. He worked for the United States Postal Office as well. During the day, he attended the Academy of Dramatic Arts at night, then moved to New York, worked for the post office there as well, and acting at night.
Yeah.
And he was Get Low in the early 1970s Broadway musical, Pearly. And his, background is extensive as well. And he was in so many great shows and series. He made appearances in Sister Sister and Good Behavior. He also did commercials for the Gap, Old Navy, Denny's, and he always would appear at dry cleaning conventions, which that must have been hilarious. There's George Jefferson. He did the Celebrity Classic TV edition special of ABC's hit primetime quiz show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? He won $125,000 for his charity. He also made a voice appearance as himself in the Seth MacFarlane animated comedy Family Guy in 2005. He was in the film American Pie Presents, The Book of Love in 2009, 2011. He reprised the role of George Jefferson for the final time alongside Marla Gibbs, Florence Johnston on Tyler Perry's House of Pain. He was also inducted in the Television Academy Hall of Fame in 2012. He also was a jazz keyboardist as well and released a single, Ain't That a Kick in the Head, followed by Dance, an album of rhythm and blues music. He appeared on Soul Train and lots more. Did you know all that? That's amazing. He was
I didn't
something else.
know all of that. No.
Yeah, he was something else. Yeah. He he was something else. And Soul Train, and he performed the song Eyes in the Dark on Soul Train. And just he was private, he was a private man.
Missed that.
He was a private man, lived his life privately, but he really was an iconic figure in the industry. What was it like? Did you enjoy writing the book? Writing a book, and especially with something as iconic and beloved as the Jeffersons, you know that there's fans out there, and there's people who love the series, who can't get enough of these characters, even all these years later in reruns and everything else, and everybody that we've enjoyed on television all these years. Was the writing process fun and easy for you, or was it challenging?
Well, I've heard it said that the second book is usually the challenger, but for me it wasn't. I got a big kick out of writing this book. The third book for me was the hardest, but this book was easier for me to write because I was more in tune with the sitcom, for one thing. For another, I got to meet and talk with Marla Gibbs, and she would even call me on the phone. And, I met so many really, really nice people. When I did a presentation at a place called the Breakfast Club in Los Angeles. Been there since 1925, I think, in the Griffith Park area. One of the ladies that I wrote about, that she was a costume designer, showed up at my presentation, and I was surprised because I wrote about her because I was trying to write about the people, other than just the stars. And she spoke with me, and she spoke with my daughter, and 2022. I've already, all the paperwork, I got a stack of paperwork like this. I ride around with it in my car. I I don't know. I liked it. I loved it. I don't even know how to answer it because, I'm still a new writer at this point. So I focused totally on this, and it was just amazing for me. I found out actions. I wrote the book about my father, the biography. Through this whole process, there's been some connection with my father. The connection on the Jeffersons was with Marla Gibbs. Her first agent knew my mother and my father. I have a picture. Yeah, I have a picture of her first agent at my mother's house with my father and my mother. And I sent it to her. It's at UCLA. And I sent it to her. I was like, her name was Lil. I forget her last name. But that's the kind of connections that I'm able to get through writing. And it's just, I love it. I found out I like research. I don't mind. I don't mind, getting the information and putting it down on paper and trying to make it so that people, when they read it, they'll think it's funny or they'll, they won't be offended, and I had to learn how to leave my opinions not totally out of it, but I had to learn to be discreet. And because I have opinions about some of the episodes, but I had to learn how to couch my opinions.
Exactly. And document the story. I mean, so many great characters. We mentioned the neighbor next door, the funny neighbor, Paul Benedict playing Bentley. He was an important part of the series as well. And of course, Ned, who was Ralph, the doorman. He played Ralph, the doorman, who was never getting a really good tip from George Jefferson.
Exactly.
Always looking for his tip, his cash. Perfectly.
Yeah, they had some. I think they had an episode where they found out Ned was, he had trouble with alcohol.
Yes, I remember that episode. Yes.
Yeah.
They dealt with heavy issues too, which is
a
beautiful way that they were able to, on these shows and these series, to cover relevant things that happen in people's lives, things that were happening socially and sometimes even politically, but things that were real, that were going on, but to bring in the humor and the levity, or levity as we call it, and weave all of that in. While a lot of shows of the time, even the shows before that were considered wholesome or what have you, that didn't talk about those things, there was always a moral. There was always something you learn. There's something about life, getting along, friendship, whatever it may be. Same thing with these shows. There was always a message. There was always something that would get you to laugh and enjoy and pass the time, but would get you to pause and think about your life and people around you and how you treat people and how maybe look at life in a different way and be more open and caring. And just, it was amazing, that weaving of those important issues, relevant issues, sometimes heavy issues, with the touch of lots of humor weaved in, the facial expressions and the way the lines were delivered and just all of it. And to affect us in a way where, there's a lot of shows out there, but they don't all have the staying power of shows like the Jeffersons, right? The contributions made continue today.
Right. The ideas that they came up with, like George did a museum. He set up a museum of his life from baby to, because he wanted to be remembered after he died. And Peter Lawford did the voiceover for the museum, telling us what the story was about. And I thought that was pretty different. Peter Lawford. I actually recognized his voice.
That whole Rat Pack, right? The Dean Martin, Sammy
Yeah.
Davis Jr., and
Yes. And
that
they
whole
they did one where George, he kept his first dollar up in the cleaners. And they
yes,
had one where the dollar told the story. The dollar
yes,
talked.
the dollar, right? Exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, and they would do holiday episodes too. Christmas episodes, and they would tie it into themes as well, which I thought which was great. And it was when it debuted, it really was something. It all
Yeah.
started when Edith Bunker gave that tearful goodbye to her neighbor. And even that episode, when the two of them who developed this wonderful, they had their crazy opinionated husbands, Archie
Right.
and George, but the bond and friendship between Edith Bunker and Louise Jefferson, Jean Stapleton and Isabel Sanford, was a beautiful thing to see. And when
Just right.
they
Two
moved on
women,
up,
two people.
two people giving a tearful goodbye as Louise and her husband George and their son Lionel moved from the working class section of Queens into luxurious Colby East, which was the fictitious high-rise apartment complex on East 63rd Street in Upper East Side neighborhood of Manhattan. And again, it premiered January of 1975, and it's just
And
could you believe it's 50 years, Elva? 50 years. Wow.
people are still watching. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think George had a lot to do with it. Sherman Hemsley, he was just funny, with his dance, and he
Yeah.
kept people coming back. I'm
Yes.
sorry. They
His
wanted to see
unique
what he was going to do
personality.
next. Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
some people really did not like him, but there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like something. That happened with my own father. My father was a comedian, and everybody thought
Iconic
he was
Eddie
just so
Green. Yeah.
funny,
Yeah.
except for one lady. I found one article where she said, "I don't see what everybody sees in this man, Eddie Green." And I thought, well, okay, you can't please everybody all the time. But yeah, I think he's the one that kept people coming back, George, because he's the one everybody quoted.
I remember when Gary Coleman made his appearances, but well before Different Strokes, and he made those hysterical performances on Good Times, well before what you're talking about, Willis, and just his facial expressions and his delivery of a line at such an early age in his life, as the neighbor or just on the time on Good Times for a short period there. That episode specifically, he was hilarious. He was terrific. He was almost like a young George Jefferson.
Yeah,
He was,
exactly.
yeah, he was just the way he could just fire it back and just, and the apartment too, the apartment that they lived in, was really nice. And, the kitchen with the 70s yellow and orange furniture and all, and just, these things just stand the test of time in our hearts and minds. And what are some
I
other
think
things that you learned along the way about that maybe even surprised you as somebody who appreciated the series, what did you learn? A few things that surprised you.
Well, that is another good question. What surprised me? Oh, Norman Lear found Sherman Hemsley and on the stage in a theater in Pearly, Victorious. I didn't know Sherman Hemsley had ever been in Pearly, Victorious. The one I saw was Ossie Davis, I believe. But that wasn't exactly shocking. But, I just learned things about these people that you just never heard before. And I don't know. I can't think right now if there were, I could do that when I wrote about my father. There were lots of things that shocked me. But so far as, except for that picture with Marla Gibbs' first agent, when I realized I had a picture of her first agent with my father, that was shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, we're related. And it took me a couple of years to get the foreword from Marla. One of the things that did shock me about her was she still lives and lived in the same place she was living back then. She still has a landline, same phone number.
Same phone number. Wow. Yeah.
The phone number, they gave me her phone number, my publisher, from when they were trying to write the book before.
Correct.
10 years. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, should I call her? It took me a while to call her, first of all. I didn't want to call her. And then when I did call her, she answered her phone. And that shocked me.
She didn't say Jefferson residence, did she?
No, she just said hello. I said, may I speak to Miss Marla Gibbs? I thought she had somebody answering her phone for her. But she's still the same, and that shocked me that she still had a landline at that point. And she still lives in the same place, But it took me a couple of years.
It's kind of refreshing. Yeah. Here she is, all these great shows that she's been on, including the Jeffersons, and a touch of Hollywood and stage, film, theater, all of this, and yet she wants the landline. She wants to keep things simple, and
exactly.
I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great way to live and to be. And she was born, Marla Gibbs was born Margaret Bradley in 1931. Margaret Teresa Bradley in Chicago, Illinois. Actress, singer, comedian, writer, television producer as well.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did I put that in the book, Teresa? She told me she didn't know where that came from.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I believe she's 93 now. The Teresa part?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that too, right? Didn't you hear that?
She said it. She said it to me.
Yes. That's something that's just sort of floated out there, right?
Yeah.
Because I always thought she was born Margaret Bradley.
Because she made me very aware of how to spell Bradley,
Right.
So
but the Teresa is something that's sort of floated out there in the ether of.
Yeah. She doesn't even know how it got in there. So
sometimes that's what happens. That's what happens. She was born Margaret Bradley in Chicago, and she's really amazing. 7+ decades singer, comedian, writer, television producer, known for George Jefferson's maid, Florence Johnston, on the Jeffersons from 75 to 85. She received 5 nominations for the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series as well. She starred in that spinoff that we talked about, Checking In, and the NBC sitcom 227 from 1985 to 1990. She also co-produced the latter series, played their lead role of Mary Jenkins. She sang the theme song as well, and she played supporting roles in these great films: The Meteor Man, Lost and Found, The Visit, The Brothers, Medea's Witness Protection, Grantham and Rose, Lemon, and so much more. Station 19 and Grey's Anatomy. In 2022, she was on there. 2021, she began playing Olivia Price on the NBC daytime drama Days of Our Lives. And she also played Sweet Gam Gam on The Thundermans, and so much more. Again, a beloved figure, Margaret Bradley, Marla Gibbs, and you have that familial connection.
I used to party in her nightclub.
Did you really?
Yeah, wow. She owned a nightclub on what used to be Santa Barbara, which is now Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Wow, that's
and
amazing.
I would see her. Yeah, I would see her there at the nightclub.
That is amazing.
She owned property. Yeah, she owned property over there. She doesn't own it any longer, but she was an amazing person. That she owned property. She was an actress, and she was very down to earth. She did not put on airs. She was just a nice lady. She is a nice lady to know.
There was that, sometimes on TV shows, there is a switch of actors or actresses playing a very important role. Like, it was a big hullabaloo when Dick York left Bewitched and Dick Sargent became Darren Stevens. And there was a switch of Lionel Jeffersons as well, from originally, of course, Mike Evans, who was also on All in the Family as the original, to Damon Evans, who assumed the role as well. Jenny, of course, remaining the same. That was a little bit of a turn of events, right? He left the show after the first season, and Damon came in, took over the role until halfway through the 4th season as well. And so that was an interesting swap there.
I think Mike was trying to, find his niche. Mike
Wasn't he involved in part of the creation, if I have this correct, of Good Times?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. And Damon Evans was actually, I'm still in touch with Damon. He's an opera singer, and he was into opera at the time, and really, really into opera. But I think I probably told him this too. I liked the Mike Evans Lionel more than I liked the Damon Evans Lionel.
The original, yeah.
He
Damon played the young Alex Haley, ages 17 through 25, in Roots: The Next Generations.
That's right.
So he did that as well, originally from Baltimore, and
and he really declined to be fully interviewed, but he and I are still friends today.
Isn't that great?
Because
you make some friendships out of it as well. And and unfortunately, Mike no longer with us as well. He passed early. I remember the news of Mike Evans, when he had passed as, originally Lionel on All in the Family and the Jeffersons, but also one of the creators of Good Times. But far too young. Yeah,
Yeah.
of the remaining cast, really, not too many, unfortunately, remain. Berlinda, of course, and Marla and Damon.
And she
Uh,
and I are still friends too. She's still around,
uh,
Berlinda. She's
exactly, yeah. But a lot of the
yeah,
original cast, unfortunately, is no longer with us. But what a legacy of laughter and love they left for all of us, huh?
yes. Yeah, it shows, that they really did all get along. Norman, I don't know. I attribute that to, these people were chosen by Norman Lear. He went and he saw these people before, he just like he knew B. Arthur. He had seen her
Right,
on stage. He went and saw these people and said, I want that person and that person. He knew instinctively somehow that, these shows would work. Good Times, I think that's going to be a different writing for me because,
hmm.
yes,
And
Norman
this
Lear,
Norman Lear, then and in recent years, he made it to 101, responsible for all these
right,
shows.
but
Iconic Norman Lear, yeah,
there were other people involved in the creation of Good Times that
that's
really
right.
didn't get
The
so.
credit. So you're going to shine light on them?
Yes, just
I like
simply
it.
because they were there.
They were
You
there and
know
they were a part of it, and
exactly.
that's
I'm not
fantastic.
gonna. I don't want to take anything away from Norman Lear because I think he was a genius, and even Berlinda Tolbert said that to me. She thought he was a genius. You know, um, everybody liked Norman. They liked him at the table when they were rewriting, and he would come in and be uplifting. And he would allow them to do their own thing also. But there are anyhow. I'm gonna try and do the best I can for Good Times, and I think I'm gonna have fun doing it.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
can't wait for that one.
yeah,
That's going to be
yeah.
absolutely amazing. Really, really is. You got Maud and now the Jeffersons, which very excited about. I'm glad that we're celebrating it. We're celebrating it, not far after at the time of this broadcast right now. We're doing the show live, and we say hello to everybody who watches this later on when it's not live. Because we get a lot of people who watch our episodes later in the archive. So we welcome those who are watching live or commenting, and those who would like to drop a comment below. Tell us your favorite episodes. What'd you love about the Jeffersons and all these iconic series? But, to have an opportunity to celebrate these shows like this, I think is something quite special. And we're just a few weeks out from the actual 50th anniversary of the very first airing an episode of this iconic
and
series, The Jeffersons.
and they did the Martin Luther King Jr. Um, assassination. They did an episode on that, George's first
Yes.
door, and that one was a tear jerker. And they played a portion of his "I Have a Dream" speech in that episode, um, with George and Wheezy just sitting there, and people were outside their store, or I think it was their store, throwing rocks and breaking windows, and all hell broke loose. But that was very like I said, that was a tearjerker for
That
me.
was a tearjerker, absolutely.
And
I've had the
so,
blessing of co-hosting a show, a series of shows each year for the Martin Luther King Heritage Foundation, and it's an honor and celebration of Martin Luther King's the annual breakfast that they have on MLK Day, and we
mhm.
bring in these folks from the foundation, and it's a half-hour television show, and I've hosted it each year as sort of a public affairs show, previewing the breakfast and the guest speakers and all of that. And it was the 40th annual this year, and it really is something really, really special. And you talk about that episode of the Jeffersons, which was a tearjerker. So many of these episodes really have stuck with us, and
Yes.
that one definitely does. And
Yes.
Elva, you're fantastic. I love chatting with you. It's like, we're sitting across the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and and of course a good book or two like this one, The Jeffersons, a
Thank
fresh
you.
look back featuring episodic insights, interviews, a peek behind the scenes, lots of great photos as well. And there's the back of the book as well.
Oh, yes. I wanted
Yeah.
to mention Ernest Harden Jr. He's the
Yes.
gentleman sitting on the floor.
Yes. And
He
I know
showed up at my book
it's a
signing.
tiny photo, so get your microscopes and binoculars out, folks. But there he is there at a book signing at one of the
Yes.
book events, right?
I
Book
invited
signing
him. I
events.
invited him and I invited Marla, but he showed up and he told me that Marla would have come, but she was ill.
Mm,
And that was fine, of course. I'm sorry she was ill, but
sure,
the
of
fact that he
course.
told me that
Send our best. Yeah.
was a big deal.
How
And
fabulous. He was there holding your
and he
book.
was there. My
Wow.
daughter, my daughter says she looked up and I was standing at the podium with my mouth hanging open.
I
Because
can
he
imagine.
wasn't sure he would have made it, but he did.
That's so
You know,
fantastic,
He
right?
was Marcus, who worked in the cleaners,
That's
Jefferson
right.
Cleaners.
Marcus and the Cleaners.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, he's welcome to stop by the Jim Masters show as a guest anytime he would like. And we talked about, remember this
Oh,
episode? Yeah, we talked about so many of the folks who came through as well. You have lots of great photos in the book, people that like photos, great anecdotes, great stories, great observations, great interviews, a lot of behind the scenes, exclusives. It really is
yes.
something quite special. And wow.
Yes.
Elva, this was really amazing. And you and I wanted to plan this at around the time that the Jeffersons hit its 50th anniversary, which
Right.
it's in right now, 50 years of the Jeffersons. And what a great way to actually celebrate it, note it, to revere in it, and to remember it with all of these fabulous folks who, and
Yeah.
other generations are discovering the series too. That's what's the power and beauty of reruns, right? Is you get a chance in syndication
Exactly.
to meet these characters and these fabulously talented actors and actresses, and who've had independent careers separate from the Jeffersons, who really knocked it out of the park on the Jeffersons, and then knowing that it came from All in the Family and so much more. Great group of
Right.
people that we honor and celebrate on this episode of the Jim Masters Show. The Jeffersons, celebrating the iconic TV series 50 years, and celebrated author who's really diving into the television world, which I love, working in TV myself, Elva Diane Green, daughter of the beloved comedian and so much more, Eddie Green, another legend. She wrote a book about him too. You can
That's
find
right.
all of these on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and BearManoMedia.com as well. And you're a delight always, Elva. Come see us again. We love having
Thank
you on
you.
the show. You're a big supporter and fan of our show. You're always spreading the word. We've chatted on the phone, you and I too. You're a dear friend and
Yes.
a blessed soul. And thank you so very much for all that you do. I just want to show you a couple of quick comments. Since our show is live, we want to sprinkle in some of our lovely fans here. Thanks for being here, Elva, to share your stories of the Jeffersons. Great conversation. Continued success with all you do. Kathleen in New York City, watching feverishly, something like that. She's excited. She's excited. I've been talking all day on the radio and TV. You know what I mean, Kathleen. You're excited. She's been excited for a long time to have you here.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Feverishly. Did I put an L in there? Feverishly, like a fever, and then Ishley, right? Ishley.
Yes.
That is fun. You got to laugh, right, Elva? You got to laugh. That's why we say levity. This has been such a wonderful conversation filled with great memories. Thank you so much for being Jim's special guest this evening. All the best to you. Yes, as we celebrate the Jeffersons with Elva Green, who has that Marla Gibbs connection. Maureen is in Arizona, USA. Our wonderful friends who we love to the north, our friends in Canada, Merlin is in Ontario. I wish all the best in all your endeavors. Elva, thanks for sharing your journey with us in beautiful Canada. We love you in Canada. Oh, Canada. No. And thanks, Merlin. And Pam Stubbs is here. And George always reminded me of the late singer from Earth, Wind, and Fire. Wonder which one it is. Yeah, Kathleen knew I meant feverishly. I think I put an L in there, feverishly. It's a new word. Look it up. We just made it up. Elva and I just made it up.
Yeah.
That's it, right? You're a great friend of our show, and we thank you for all the time. Again, the book, folks, is The Jeffersons. Check it out.
Thanks.
It's one of her latest. She's working on The Good Times now. She's also done Maude, and you can see that episode archived on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. It was really something special. You're going to love this, and the forward is by Marla Gibbs. Good stuff. Elva, I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you. It's always a real pleasure to have you here on the show, my friend.
I did. I do. I always do. Thank you so much for having me. I think I'm fading out because I'm losing my light.
You're losing the light, but never losing the light inside and that Elva spirit, right?
Right.
You be well, my friend. Thanks for stopping by the show once again, and happy 50 years to the Jeffersons, right?
Yep, that's right. Happy anniversary, Jeffersons.
So on this episode, we were moving on out, and right now, Elva's going to be moving on out. Thank you, my friend. Come see us again soon, okay? You be well.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Elva Green, celebrated author, as we celebrate 50 years of the Jeffersons. Great conversation, lots of behind the scenes and some surprises and little nuggets in there as well. Share your memories. Drop a comment below in the comments section. What do you love about the Jeffersons? Who's your favorite? Maybe it wasn't Wheezy and George that were your favorite characters on the Jeffersons. Maybe you liked some of the other cast members on the Jeffersons. Maybe you have some nuggets. Maybe you are somebody who worked on the series. Maybe you're somebody that knows somebody who was a part of the series. Maybe you remember it, of course, spinning off from All in the Family. Look at that shot there. There's Rob Reiner, of course, and Sally Struthers. And there's Mike Evans, who was Lionel, and the wonderful Carol O'Connor, Gene Stapleton, who was Edith. That was, of course, All in the Family. There's Marla Gibbs. There's everybody. Berlinda and Sherman and Isabel and Franklin and Roxie Roker all together there on set. And there's all the cast. There's Mrs. Jefferson, played by Zara Cully. And there's Jenny, who was Berlinda, and Isabel Sanford, and Damon, and Sherman, and Marla. And Bentley is there, who was Paul Benedict. And, of course, Franklin Cover, who was Tom Willis, and Helen Willis, Roxie Roker. And Ned, of course, Wertimer was Ralph the Doorman. Great cast. Good stuff. Love going back in time, with all of you here and celebrating these iconic things in our lives. And thanks to everybody for the great comments. We hope you had a feverishly amazing time with us here on the Jim Masters Show series. Thanks for all the great comments. We'll pop a few more in. Maureen says, good stuff in Lovely Hall tonight. Thanks so much, Jim. It's been great to be together again. As always, gang, we love having you here, watching all around the world. Thank you, Kathleen, as well, in New York City. We appreciate you watching and sharing your comments with all of us. and a lot of new faces watching as well. Ralph Bannister or Ray Bannister watching. Ray, good to have you with us as well here on the show. If you're new, welcome to the Jim Masters Show. It's a pleasure to have you here. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and X, formerly Twitter, at Jim Masters TV. Drop a comment below if you enjoyed this episode. Leave a comment for us as well. We love when you do that. Drop a comment. Click the like. Yeah, give us a thumbs up like. We love that. And also share the episode on your social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. We love when you do that. It means the world to us and helps us continue to grow. Jim Masters TV is the channel. Thanks to everybody who's done that. We appreciate that. And welcome to everybody who's watching for the first time and all of our regulars watching all the time as well. This is your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time till next time. Again, you can find her book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, bearmanormedia.com, and all the great places as we celebrate the Jeffersons here on the Jim Masters Show. We'll see you on the next episode. So many more great guests, celebrity friends, and special guests joining us right here in Liberty Hall on the Jim Masters Show for all of you. Yes, we did love Isabel Sanford, and guess who's coming to dinner? Absolutely. And a famous director was invited to talk at a colloquium at NASA in Maryland. He wanted his own trailer. Ah, really? Sometimes that happens, that's a little background there. Sometimes that happens. It's an interesting business, but what a great business it is, huh? Thank you, Pam. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on the Jim Masters Show. See you on the next one. Thanks for being with us as always. Take care, be well. And we love having you here on the Jim Masters Show. Cheers.